Hey guys, what's up? This is part 2 of me teaching you how to do a chord stack like this. So in the previous tutorial we went back and we did the sound design for all these patches, and now we're going to EQ them and we're going to process them. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to group all these. Turn them on. So we're going to start with just this clean layer. Add an EQ. Actually, we'll add an EQ to everything. So there's clearly a lot to EQ. So actually maybe we'll start with something a bit easier, because the clean, detuned, this sort of hypersaw layer are very similar in terms of harmonic content and frequency spectrum. So we'll go with something a little more obvious. I guess we'll start with the sub. So this is what it sounds like. So what we all we want is the sub, obviously. So we're gonna just roll off all these highs and everything. Let's call it 300 hertz. Okay. Another easy one to do is the white noise. So we just want it in the very top. So we'll see what it's like now. So none of that is what we want. Even this right here we don't want. So we can make a steep curve and just roll out all of it. Let's call it 8 kilohertz. And then we can even roll off everything above 18K, which is the default. So we just have this. So that's good. We can move on to the lead now. Again, we don't want any of this like low mid or just low region. So we can roll those out. Maybe there, let's call it 400 hertz. And then we can even roll out some of what the noise is taking up. So maybe to there. Maybe we can use a steep curve. Okay, that's pretty fine. Next we can go to the low mids. And I previously had an auto filter on here just to get rid of all this upper content, but we'll use the EQ. Maybe, let's call it 900 hertz. And then we can get rid of all this very low content. Let's call it 120 hertz. Alright, so we have these all EQ'd. Next we have these three. So we can start with the serum. We don't really want any of this low mid, low stuff again. A lot of this is being taken up by the white noise, so we can roll that out. And this is where the EQing gets tricky, because these three layers are so similar. If you listen. We take this EQ off real quick. That's one. That's another. And that's the third. So it's not so easy to EQ it like this, just because they take up such similar regions. But we're gonna have to try at least. So start with the serum. Again, we'll roll out the lows and the high highs, and let's just see. I think this one has a lot of upper content, so maybe we want to accentuate that. Maybe like there, and then we can maybe cut right here, and I'll show you why in a minute. What we can do is we can just take this EQ, we can copy it, we can paste it right on the detuned layer. And what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of invert these. So for this one, we boosted on the serum, so we're going to cut on this one. And here we cut on the serum, so we're going to boost. So we have a good balance. And then for this last one, again, we can definitely get rid of the lows and low mids. Can get rid of those highs. And maybe we can boost right in the middle. So for those two previous patches, we either cut or boosted here, or we cut or boosted here. So maybe we'll just go right in the middle, and we'll just boost a little bit. And we can cut both regions, because these other layers are already being boosted there. So when we have all three of these, it's a bit more balanced. And then we can add the lows, lead, white noise, sub. And then the last thing we have is the saw bass. So we don't need the sub. We don't need these high highs. And then a lot of these mids are already being taken up by all of these layers, so we can cut. I also like the upper spectrum here, so I might boost it a little bit. Okay, so there we have all of our layers all EQ'd. The other thing is, I was talking about how similar these are, and we can use panning to sort of separate them a bit more. And what I'm going to pan are these two, because they seem to be the most similar. Everything else is a bit more distinct and separated in the whole spectrum, but these two are so similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pan one to the right, no more than, I'd say, 15 cents or so. And then this one I'm going to pan to the left. Just to separate them a little more. Okay, so that's the EQing done, and now we're going to go into processing. So what I like to do is I like to first start off with a compressor, just to sort of glue things together. So I'll just back off on the threshold just a little bit so we get a little bit of gain reduction. Okay. And actually, before we move on, I'm just going to get all the levels right. So I'm going to open up all these, and I'm going to turn all of them down, all the way to 0. And I'm going to slowly bring them up one by one until I find that I have a pretty good balance. So start with the clean. I'm just going to slowly bring it up. To maybe there. The first one's pretty arbitrary. We just want to get a balance throughout. So next we'll bring up the detuned. To maybe there. Next. Next. That sounds about right. The lead. Noise. Sub. And then the saw bass. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good balance. You can always go back and change. And now we can actually move on to post-processing. So because we changed the levels here, we're going to have to adjust the threshold a bit. So just very mild compression, just so we glue everything together. And what we're going to do next is we're going to do multiband processing. So this is splitting up the spectrum into different parts and processing them differently. We can do that with multiband dynamics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one in, and I'm going to, you could do Apple G, Control G, group them. And then we're going to open up this chain selection. Okay, so right now we have one chain with one multiband dynamics on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Apple D or duplicate it so we have 3 of them. Okay. For the first one, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to solo the highs. Next one, I'm going to solo the mids. The next one, I'm going to solo the lows. So if we solo them, we have it all separated. Okay, so if we did it right, then we should be able to just turn this off, and it'll be the same exact thing as it when it's on. So, and that's exactly what happened. So good. We're going to rename them high, mid, low. Okay, so we'll start with the highs. I like to use Camel Crusher. It's free. You can get it online. It's a distortion plugin, and it's really great. So I'm going to drag one in right to the highs. Okay. The Annihilate preset is actually really great. I'm going to turn the mix all the way down, and then we're going to mix in this signal just to the highs. So let's solo the highs, and we're going to mix it in. That should be fine. Anything past that will probably be overkill. And then the only other thing that we're going to do is we're going to put in a simple delay. And we can use this to widen the sound. Okay. This is using the Haas effect. There are plenty of videos online on YouTube that you can watch, and it's super helpful, really helpful trick. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to time-based. And right now, both the left and right channels are being delayed by 100 milliseconds. Okay, we're also going to turn the dry wet all the way up. And we're going to take them all the way down. So now they're both being delayed by 1 millisecond. The thing that widens it is if we just change the delay of one of the channels. You don't want to go above 30 milliseconds, because then you'll be able to differentiate between the left and the right channels. You'll know that they're playing something differently. So we can go up to, say, 20 or so, 22. And it should be a little bit wider. That's with it. That's without it. We can also, if you want, we can verify that it is wider by using an imager. So this is without it. And this is with it. If you focus on this region right here and right here, you'll see that it does get a little bit wider. So this is without it and with it. get a little more content here. A lot of this is about very subtle changes, and they add up to make a really good finished product. So that's all we're going to do for the highs. Now we're going to go to the mids, and we're going to drag in a saturator. And we're going to give it just a couple decibels of drive. Maybe 4 decibels. I'm going to turn on soft clip so we're not clipping. And we can change this curve type. I like soft sine. It's a little bit more hard than the analog. So this is analog. And this is soft sine. Okay, so it's just adding a little bit more weight to the mids. And then the last thing we're going to do is process the lows. Now, all I'm going to do is going to compress it a little bit. And you can do it with multiband dynamics. I'm used to using it, using the compressor with it, so I'm just going to do that. And we just want a bit of gain reduction. Yeah, something like that. And that should be it, okay? So we have our whole effect track. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to drag in another multiband dynamics, but we're going to use the multiband compression preset. We're going to turn the amount to 0 and just mix it in. Maybe around 70 or so is good. And then if we do a whole 8B, we just group all these. This is without the post-processing. And this is with it. Definitely louder, but I like the effect. It makes the highs a lot more present, adds a little more weight to the mids, and makes the lows a little more consistent. So without. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to process things in parallel. So we're going to open up this return tab. And I already have a couple loaded. I'll use Rough Rider for drums, Reverb for pretty much anything. And then I have these 3 New York compression units. New York compression, Mr. Bill actually did a whole tutorial on this, and that's how I found out about it. And it's honestly a pretty big game changer. At least for my music it was. So it allows you, basically it's just a compressor with a very drastic setting and an EQ before it. So there's highs, mids, and lows. Okay? And we can mix in this New York compression and kind of, we get to choose which part of the spectrum we really want to accentuate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix in some highs. So we don't want to go overboard. We don't want to do this. But very subtle. Maybe that. We'll add a little bit less to the mids. Maybe around there, and then the lows a little bit more. So this is without New York compression. And this is with it. I might back off on the sub a little bit. Okay. I'll put in a link to the Mr. Bill tutorial. Highly recommend checking it out, as well as all of his other stuff. It's all really great. And And yeah, that is pretty much what I do to make a big stack. So turn the stack example off. And if we do add some sidechain, alright, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments and I'll try to answer them. Yep, that's it. Take care.